I mean, this can be the first question. What is your painting style or focus at the moment? Because I've noticed you're putting a lot of new ones out.
It's not that I planned anything like that. I mean, I never plan. Um, I never do preparatory sketches or anything. I just sort of begin to experiment. If things begin to emerge, then that's good. And so it's kind of risky, really. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm really kind of happy with that recent one. And I got that really from my admiration of Francis Bacon, who never did, preparatory sketches. He always talked about unlocking the valves of feeling and just sort of allowing it to, you open those valves and you just sort of, let it happen. So it's existing on your kind of nervous system rather than a rational.
You just like very much just whatever you're feeling that day, whether you're using some salt or some paint or some paper.
Oh, right, because that one um, is very textured and it's eggshells. So I got tons of eggs. I just kept eggshells, scrunched them all up, and then painted over them. So it's very, very textured. And
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? So I chuck stuff on it, eggshells, anything, and it just makes it kind of live, a bit more. Francis Bacon used to get dust and put stuff on, or and it's I don't mind that. I think it's great. Anything to sort of make it organic, not planned or plotted, but so it's got life.
Is he your favorite painter then? Is he your?
Yes, he is. He's one who's had most influence on me, and I wrote a play about him that was on at the old Fitz. His paintings just came, directly from an emotional kind of core. I mean, he's a highly intelligent man, but I think I mean, people respond to them very viscerally. I mean, they're very confronting paintings, some of them, and when you see them, it actually kind of affects you, which I think good painters do. I remember going to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam and just seeing those paintings sort of live, as it were, and the emotional impact that actually has. People were kind of crying, I mean, and I think if you can find that kind of quality, which is rare, that's visceral and passionate and obsessive, then I think that's wonderful.
I mean, the way artists live, would you say that's necessary? Like, I mean, I remember at drama school, you always, all the teachers used to say, you become a better actor as time goes on, as you get more life experience. And artists do tend to be the ones that are living like for example, in Sydney, they all congregate to Newtown, where it's kind of more guttural, more lively, yeah, more street, and it seems like everywhere artists are sort of gathering in those quarters where first artists gather there, and then it seems like then it gets gentrified later on. But it's like we are the sort of people that are looking for that. Do you think it's necessary for an artist to be in that sort of on the pulse in that respect?
Not necessarily, actually. I think Flaubert said something like, live like a bourgeois, be middle class, but have your mad imagination, So I think it's different for everyone. I think, the whole thing of the suffering artist and, in the garret and all the rest of it, or that you have to be unhappy or punish yourself or, all the rest of it, or live some kind of desperate life is nonsense, really. I think, I think it should be in the work. It's like David Lynch. His work is incredibly dark and complex and confronting, but he himself seems to be a very affable, sort of, likable, kind of guy, because it all is in the work. He's not kind of, throwing himself about being tortured. It all goes into the work, and I approve of that.
Why do you think that's caught on so much, though, the whole suffering artist image?
I think it's like a 19th century sort of, image of the artist in the gutter and, in the garret, no money, no support. And I think it's a romantic ideal rather than a realistic ideal. Picasso was very kind of bourgeois, he had wonderful, beautiful houses and, even though he did live in poverty, obviously when he's first starting in Paris, but I don't think it's strictly necessary. Because sometimes it's like playing a role more than actually, you see people who are pretending to be this tortured artist.
What do you look for when auditioning an actor for drama school?
Oh, I know. Yeah. I guess what we always used to look for, talk about, was something called trainability. You know, you not necessarily someone who's polished or who gave kind of the best in the room audition in that sense, but someone who you thought would actually profit from 3 years and would be open enough to, you know, to evolve and take advice and listen and you know, dig deep when need be. So I'd much rather take someone who was kind of, you know, had some rough edges, but who was really open. You're also not just looking at the talent, but you're also looking, do you want to spend 3 years with this person? You know, do you want to spend 3 years in their company? Are they going to be generous? Are they going to be a good company member, an ensemble member? Are they going to be supportive? Yeah, you know, who knows now with, you know, when with the coronavirus striking us all and education establishments and funding, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a very, very complex future, I think, for theatre training and for theatre and, you know, TV and film and everything. So, yeah, it's, I think there's going to be a lot of rethinking about how to deliver programs effectively more online. You know, I think it's going to have to come, you know, so there's a possibility, you know, that drama training, you know, acting training, sorry, it's going to have to be rethought. I'm not quite sure how that might be, but you know, it's a good opportunity now to take stock and say what's working. Are we training the actors correctly actually now for the kind of industry it is? You know, which where you do self-tests all the time, and do you know what I mean? People don't. Theatres are very few of them. It's very difficult to sustain a career in theatre. You know, just
Well, yeah, I do remember it. When I graduated, I had no sort of skill towards, like, you know, how do you, we did have those few lessons in, you know, how to apply for funding and things like that. And I think since then, there has been more classes introduced on the business side of acting, and I think that's very important. But yeah, I mean, everything that I know today is because I literally just fell on my face so many times and had to
yeah,
figure it out the hard way when I graduated. Like
yeah,
everything from, how do you know you have a good headshot?
yeah,
How do you know that your agent is a good agent? How do you talk to, how do you network? How do you, you know, prepare your CV? Should you have a website? Should you do YouTube? Should you think outside the box?
yeah, yeah.
And because it's like we still have such a structured, I think a lot of trained actors still approach things in a very square way. Like you've trained, you graduate, you audition and work in theater, and then you audition for TV, film.
Yeah.
And then you try and do your own shows on the side. But actually, like platforms like YouTube or TikTok,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
I think that they are ways to get out there, to have a creative outlet, number one, but also to be seen. And also, it's
Mm,
like, you know, it can be a form of an online portfolio that might, you know, help things further than sort of, you know, trying the traditional ways. And I think, yeah, I think it, we need to think outside the box as artists, because everybody else is, you know, and the world is changing. So
no, it is. It's changing very rapidly, and I do think it's this, you know, perversely is an opportunity to, you know, to think about lots of things like that. It's a very, as you know, it's a very curious profession, and I think that's why one of the reasons, going back to what I said about observing people in the room, is I think it's so much. Everyone who came to WAAPA is talented. Simple as that. You know, you audition. You know, you get in against 900 other people, so you've got something. So what is it? You know, you need, but also you need other things like luck, but also the right temperament. You know, how do I deal with constant rejection? How do I deal with the agent not phoning? How do I deal? You know, how without taking it personally, and all those very difficult issues. I think for
it's funny, artists are so sensitive, and you know, they're asked to be vulnerable, and they are usually quite sensitive and full of empathy in their own lives. But then our industry is all about business, really, a huge part of it. When you're dealing with your agent, when you're dealing with, you know,
yeah,
production companies, are you the right look, or you know, will you bring an audience to your film? Or, you know, it's like, it's
that's right.
interesting that we're we're so sensitive, and we're so, you know, we are able to go and change and go into different things, and yet we are asked, I think it's a huge jump that we are asked, or we must then have to adapt and have that hard skin, which
That's
is,
right.
I mean, people in other industries, my friends, are totally unrelated to arts and acting. And when I tell them what my day consists of, or how many times I was rejected, or, you know, or the process of an audition and getting a job, or like finishing the job, and then, you know, you're with this crew for 4 months, and then bam, it's finished and you're back to nothing, like no nothing. They can't handle it. They just freak out, and they're like, I don't know how you do it. I mean, even one rejection gets me
Yeah.
totally insane. And I think it's interesting. It's asking a lot of people who are extremely sensitive and full of empathy and you know, soft, compared to, you know, people who are, you know, not artists or in other industries, and
Mm.
but we are actually asked to be a lot harder than a lot of other people in other industries, which is total opposites. And it took me a long time to to find that balance of remaining soft on the inside, so I can pull things out in an audition or when filming something, but then, you know, when they cut camera and if there's stress on set or whatever, then I can then just go whoop and be like, right, you know, protection, business mode, now we're doing this.
I don't think it ever goes away. You know, I think, and even, you know, actors who work all the time and suffering rejection, you know, it's just part of it, and you have to
How
kind
is it for you as a director or a writer? Do you have that
of.
same kind of discrepancy, or is it easier, or how is it?
I think, well, I trained as an actor and
Mm.
in London, and I just found it. My temperament is wrong. It wasn't that I was a terrible actor or anything. I just actually had the wrong temperament, and I've got the right temperament to be a director. A certain kind of objectivity and a certain kind of, you know, a tiny bit of ice in your heart occasionally. I think you need as a director to, you know, just to see things objectively and clearly and give, you know, not to get so emotionally involved with the production that you don't see where the flaws are or how you can help actors. You know, you have to, and that suited me and my personality much better than. And I remember it was a kind of an epiphany really when we're in third year at drama school. We had a 2-week thing called Creatively Fortnight, which is where they didn't know what to do with us, I think, looking back. But a friend of mine, who's still one of my greatest friends, said, will you direct me in a one-man show? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I really, when I started, I suddenly felt, oh, I can do this. I'm actually helping him. I know, you know, I've got the right sort of, you know, and it was a real, I mean, thank God that happened, because I may have wasted many years buggering about trying to be an actor. But I suddenly found I could actually, rather than a mediocre actor, I could actually be a very good director. So, you know, you find out what suits you. You know, some people leave WAAPA and give up almost immediately because they just don't like it. They don't like the industry. They find it cruel and, you know, unsatisfying, and, you know, and I understand that too.
Go on to the next question now.
Okay.
When you stopped working at WAAPA, something amazing happened where suddenly you just blossomed in all these different directions with your writing and directing and teaching in different places, even across the world, and also being on television, but we'll get to that. So the first one is, how did the commission from the National Theatre School of Ireland come about, and where you wrote and directed the play Dirty Laundry, for one?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've had a long association with the Gaiety School, which is the National Theatre School of Ireland. I first went there in 1996, and I struck up a really good friendship with the director there, Patrick Sutton, who's still a very dear friend of mine. And over the years, he came to Australia, and I went back there to do some teaching. And then when I started evolving plays, and you know, Patrick knew about that, and so he just commissioned me to to write and direct. So I went to Dublin to meet the actors, and then went away. You know, they presented some stuff, and then I went away and wrote the play. Then went back to Dublin, and you know, we kind of worked on it, and then it went on. So it's been a lovely association with and I love Dublin, and I love Ireland, and I love Irish actors. So it was you know, win-win really.
Yeah, the spelling bee. I love this. So
Ah,
when you became the pronouncer on the Great Australian Spelling Bee,
I did.
did you apply any of your own acting techniques to yourself, first of all?
It was only really one day when I were on set, and Grant Denyer said to the studio audience, he said, "I'm playing the part of the pronouncer as Chris Edmund," and they went, "Yeah, yeah." And I went, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I am actually performing." And so I did think some of the things about playing actions, playing to affect the kids, how I communicated with the kids, the kind of acting things came in handy. You know, your objective is to communicate the word as clearly as you can. So that's, so yeah, I did think about that quite a lot. But that was an incredible experience. I mean, I actually loved that. Going, you know, suddenly being in the studio, cameras everywhere, and you know, makeup and the camaraderie of the dressing room, you know, getting in early, you know, doing all that. I really love the little rituals of that. It was a very happy time for me. And the producer would talk to me you know, through an earpiece. And sometimes I remember once she said it was really hard. She said, "Chris," I said, "Yes," and said, "I think a grandfather smile." And I went, "Oh, okay." And so I was quite stern with the kid. I say, "That is," gave him a dreaded look. "Correct." And then went all benign, you know. So and she went, "No, thank you." And I said, "Thank you." Yeah.
What was actually, because then you went on, I think it was afterwards with Beat Bugs, the Netflix show Beat Bugs. You were the voice
Yeah.
director on that. What did
Yes.
that involve?
Oh well, basically, it's an animated series. I worked on two, one called Motown Magic as well. Beat Bugs was based on the Beatles catalogue, and Josh Wakely, the creator and producer and writer of lots of the episodes, invited me to work on it in Vancouver for Beat Bugs in LA for. And basically, what I had to do was direct the actors, but it's like I'm directing a radio play. I sat with the engineer and someone on the scripts, and you know, we had a group and the producers, and then behind a glass wall there were the five actors, main actors, and then we had guests come in and stuff like that, because everyone was based, as I said, around, so the Beatles songs were covered by people like Pink and Sia and Robbie Williams, and it's great to be a part of. And what amazed me when I first started was how physical the actors were in front of the microphones, very kind of big and so forth. Josh was very interesting about pre-life. So just, as in life, before I say something, I'll go, and then, the little moments before you say something to give it that life. And so that was really interesting. And he was just, we just go through the script, maybe 20 lines at a time, and then I give them notes.
Are they all there in the same room recording?
Yeah, they are all, rather than, yeah, they were all in the studio, so they could kind of play off one another, which was really good, rather than just being on your own at home doing it, So yes, I had them all in the studio at the same time. I've always loved working in other places and working with people from different backgrounds and everything.
Me too. I love working around the world. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's why I know I didn't with your year, but why I took a group to Hong Kong. I took a group to Paris. I took a whole production to Dublin. A play, took all the third years over there. So I just think it's so important, in particular when you're from Perth and maybe you haven't been out of Perth or out of Australia, just to see other countries, other cultures, how different students work in different parts of the world. And I'm sure that was such a powerful, portal for people to understand just broaden their perceptions of acting and what goes on, and see different kinds of work.
It has been interesting for me being here in Belgrade, Serbia, to see what the actors are like here, and it's totally different. It's so different.
Right.
A lot more visceral, I guess,
Yeah.
guttural acting. A lot more towards pantomime, like for theater.
Yes.
And literally what you see on the street, that's what you see on stage. And now I think because of that, I understand Chekhov a lot more.
I think there's a danger in Australia that actors associate being truthful with being small. If I don't really do anything, I'm really just being incredibly truthful. But do you see what I mean?
Mm.
Rather than actually saying truth, you can be truthful and also can be enormous performances.
Well, for film it applies though, right? I mean, for film you have to be small but truthful because you have to let the camera in.
No, that's true. But if you look at some film performances, if you look at Jack Nicholson, say all the people we think are great actors, Marlon Brando, they're not small performances. Al Pacino in The Godfather, Marlon Brando. These are big, powerful. Meryl Streep doesn't do diminished little tiny performances. They're often brave and out there. And do you see what I mean?
Maybe that was more a reference to when people say small, I think they maybe refer to the stillness of the body, keeping the energy and the intensity, but just with a stiller body than you would have on the stage.
And of course, if you've got a camera in your face, you just have to keep very, very still and you just have to think really. And, that because film photographs thought in that kind of way. And just, to see great actors just thinking their way through things, having things occur to them is a real lesson, I think.
Mm. On the topic of former students of yours, Hugh Jackman is a great buddy of yours who also honored you with the scholarship in your name, the Chris Edmund Performing Arts Scholarship, which you then presented to someone at WAAPA, I gather, since...
Yes, it went for 2 years, yes.
For 2 years. But there's a video of you on YouTube being surprised. It was all set up through MasterCard. You were invited over to New York to give a talk, and then he came in and...
There's a bit, there's something going on, but I couldn't quite work it out. And then I just started my talk, and Hugh popped out, and it was lovely because I think it was really it was an acknowledgement from Hugh about acknowledging how important that training was from all of us who taught him there at that time. And I think that was a really lovely thing for him to do, to say that those 3 years at WAAPA were, laid some foundations that, assisted him in his career. So it was very lovely on that level.
It's nice that, you keep in touch with a lot of us actually, and that's, why do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, when it's not like a normal kind of university job, is it? I mean, over 3 years with a relatively small group of people, you begin to understand, you know a bit about them, what makes them tick, and, you become concerned about their futures and their destinies, and you take pleasure in their triumphs, and you feel, despondent for when things are harder. And so it's simply that, really. It's just nice for me to be in touch with people whose training I've been involved with.
Yeah, I remember when I came back to Perth to do As You Like It, to play Rosalind, and you and I caught up and we had that nice long walk. I still have that video recording, by the way.
Yes.
We recorded our conversation, didn't we?
That was very funny, I seem to remember, but don't put any of it.
Nice, like to see you just before I started. I was about to start rehearsals, and to see you just beforehand, and it kind of just gave me that little extra push of confidence, to do the show. And it went really well in the end. But I wish you saw it. I mean, you left, didn't you? You had to go. You went.
I was overseas.
Yeah, but it was really nice to see you beforehand, at least,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean that. Yes, I often don't like going to the theatre because I've got a kind of mental notebook in my head, and it's very rarely I just can just say, oh, abandon myself to it. I'm
Do you
thinking,
mean
oh,
generally, or when your students are
no,
performing?
no, just generally, I see it too critically, I think, or
Right.
too technically. Saying, oh, that he or she's, isn't lifting key words and whatever it might be, stakes aren't high enough, yeah, whatever. So it's kind of weird.
So what are you saying? You don't go to the theatre then to watch? You just
I don't like going to the theatre much, to be quite
really?
frank.
How's that? How does that work out?
Well, well, it's so rarely that it's good, you know.
In Australia or generally?
Yeah. Well, most of the stuff I see in Australia isn't very good, but there we go. I think it's very hard, I think it's very hard for actors, I mean, say in Perth, because you just don't get the opportunity to hone your craft. You're not doing it all year. Do you know what I mean? You're not doing 5 or 6 productions a
That's
year,
everywhere.
whatever.
That's Sydney as well. That's
I
everywhere.
know, but I think that's a big issue.
Mm,
And if you're just doing one show every 2 years,
mm,
you know, and maybe you haven't kept your vocal skill, it's like being
mm.
camera fit, you need to be,
Well,
fit
I'm
in a kind of
actually thinking
voice.
of Perth because Perth is a smaller city, much smaller industry. Actually, a lot of the same actors are in a couple of shows a year, so they do get to hone their craft. But in Sydney, I think it's a big problem.
Yeah, no, it is. And it is, in all areas of telly, if you're not doing it, you're not camera fit, you're not relaxed, you're not just ready.
That's
And
right.
it's a terrible thing for actors, that the lack of employment and the lack of opportunity to really get better at what you do, to structure a long career and really, you know, work with great directors and work with people who are going to help guide you. And,
How
I think
how does
it's,
it work, do you think, for then directors who are starting out or who are, I mean, if you don't do a show for a while, do you also get rusty? And how does it work from the directing side?
yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, I think more and more, I mean, if you want to get a play on, you write for 2 or 3 actors, if you write for 10, it's not going to get funded. Do you know what I mean? So directors, I mean, I was very fortunate when I was, beginning my professional career, to work with quite large casts, and so that I can pull big productions together. But if you're only working with 2 or 3 actors as a director, you're not really, which tend to be more naturalistic. So you're not really extending your craft to, bigger kinds of productions, and that's a big issue, I think, just not having the practice.
Mm. And recently you were writing your new play for Ireland, for going to Ireland.
Yeah.
With
Yes.
writing as well, I mean, I guess it's something that needs to be done every day, generally practicing, or how do you find that,
Yeah,
that approach?
I don't at all. I tend to write in kind of manic bursts when I do it. I think a novelist has to, but it's a long distance runner. You have to do it every day. You have to do office hours. You have to get in 9, get in the office. Right.
Based on a vlog I did last week, it made me think about the importance of art in society. Why do you think art is important in society? Do you think art is one of the pillars of society, what we need, in our culture?
Well, yeah,
Help
well,
us.
yeah, I think we do. I mean, the cultural life of a city or a town is very important in terms of just sort of feeding people. Stuff that they don't get in any other way. That can just be going to an art gallery and soaking things up, or seeing a play that provokes your thought, or seeing a dance piece that touches you emotionally. Um, I mean, I think it is under, in as we know in Australia at this point, the arts seem very undervalued. But as everyone points out, everyone's watching Netflix. Are watching actors, are watching directors, are watching writers' work. So if people think, and what it brings to the economy, but I think there's still that thing people, say to actors, oh, how do you learn your lines, or what do you do during the day? Do you know what I mean? Rather than understanding that it's actually, all these things, painting, writing, acting, directing, require a great deal of, you know, reflection, rigor, commitment, all those sorts of things. So I think, you know, in other countries, you know, Germany or France, you know, I think, and England to a degree, I think artists are much more valued than they seem to be in Australia, unfortunately.
Tennis round, and then we're finishing up.
You've got a tennis round.
Yeah, I got a tennis round. What's your favorite city that you've lived or worked in?
My favorite city?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess because I spent so much time of my early life in London, it's still the most familiar place to me in many ways. You know, my dad worked in all his life in London, and you know, and then I lived there for a long time, and yeah, so I still get a buzz, and you know, when I go back, it's kind of home in many ways.
What's your favorite, if you have one, do you have a favorite playwright?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm a huge fan of Sam Shepard. I think I love his work, and I'm a massive fan of Carol Churchill. I think she's, you know, she's in her 80s, and she's just had 4 short plays on at the Royal Court, and everyone's saying they're amazing. You know, she continues to, you know, to push, to reinvent, push the boundaries, find new ways. You know, and I really admire that. So I'd say Carol Churchill, actually.
Do you have a favorite director?
You know, I saw all Peter Brook's early work. I was fortunate enough, you know, living in London as a teenager, and I worked at the Aldwych, where the Royal Shakespeare Company's London base, and saw all of Peter Brook's early works, Merit Sard and things like that. And you know, I think his impact as a director has been enormous over the years.
What topic are you, or problem are you currently mulling over or trying to sort out? It could be like a huge world theme or just something in your everyday life.
It is an interesting question. I think I want to do something else, and I'm not sure what that is yet. I think I'll stop doing what I'm doing soon and try and find another career. This, you know, and find something else. And I'm not sure what that is. But I've got some ideas, but I'm not telling you.
Meaning not directing, writing, painting?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm.
Oh, need to talk to you about this later.
Yeah.
To finish off, what advice would you give to other aspiring creatives in the same field as you?
I don't know. I don't know, because the rewards are terrific, but also the frustrations are enormous. So I think very, very carefully about it, about whether this is really, really, really what you want to do, or you're likely to suffer a life of penury and despair.
And if they do want to do it, then what advice would you
do
give?
it. Yeah, do it. Of course, do it. If you can't, if it's really, but you have to. I think you have to take it really, really seriously. I don't, too many people just muck about at it, and don't really prepare.
How
And
do you
don't
mean muck about?
well, don't keep working on their voice. Don't keep stimulated. Don't keep reading plays. Don't keep, I'm really interested, and then standards just sort of can go. So I think unless you're really, say, yes, I am going to commit my life to this and devote, the same way an athlete does, or a dancer does. You can't just leave it for months and expect to be able to do your petit changement the same way. But you know what I mean? I think it's an industry where sometimes people aren't as focused or as rigorous as they actually really should be if they want to succeed at the level they imagine they can. And it's often, laziness and everything. So, if you're going to do it and be focused and committed and obsessed and passionate, and that's what I'd suggest.